Good evening, and thank you for attending. My name is Natalie Sayre, and I'll be the moderator for this evening's debate. Before we begin, please silence all phones and electronic devices. Additionally, please refrain from any interruptions to the debate, as it is being recorded for on-demand viewing and post-captioning services. The Citizens Clean Election Commission is the sponsor for this evening's event. The Clean Elections Act is a campaign finance reform and public education measure initiated by Arizona citizens and passed by voters in 1998. The system provides clean funding for qualified participating candidates who agree to abide by the Clean Election Act and rules. These include contribution and spending limits, foregoing special interest money, and participating in commission debates. We encourage audience questions, so please utilize the note card given to you when you entered the room and hold it up. Our volunteers will pick up the cards from the first 3 rows and deliver them to me. If you need additional cards, just raise your hand. If you have a question for a specific candidate, it will be considered in the second half of the debate, so please include the candidate's name on the top of the card. We screen questions for clarity, to eliminate duplications, speeches, personal attacks on candidates, and for brevity. The debate is scheduled for up to 90 minutes, so we may not get to all audience questions, but we will do our best. Tonight's debate includes 1 minute for opening statements. The first half of the debate begins with 2 minutes to each candidate to answer the same question. After all candidates have responded, the first responding candidate will be given an additional 30 seconds. We will rotate which candidate does respond first. The second half will allow for a different question per candidate with 1 minute to answer, and some questions will have an optional 30 seconds for the other candidates to comment on the topic. If you would like that 30 seconds when the time comes, just raise your hand and I'll call on you. And then finally, we'll close with 1 minute closing statements. We ask that you remain polite to all of the candidates and give them a fair and uninterrupted hearing, no matter how strongly you may agree or disagree with anything being said. Tonight's participants are Mr. Sonny Borrelli, a Republican for State Senator in District 5, Ms. Jem Morgan, a Democratic candidate for State Senator in District 5 and a Clean Elections participating candidate, Mr. Leah Biasucci, a Republican candidate for State Representative in District 5, Ms. Regina Cobb, Republican State Representative for District 5, and finally, Ms. Mary McCord Robinson, a Democratic candidate for State Representative in District 5 and also a Clean Elections participating candidate. The order in which the candidates will speak has been determined by alphabetical order by last name, starting with the Senate and for opening comments, and will progress from that starting point. The order for the second half will be determined by reverse alphabetical order by last name, starting with the House. So Sonny, will you start us off with your opening comments?
Yes, thank you everybody for being here. My name is Sonny Borrelli. I'm your state senator. A little bit about my background. I dropped out of high school. I got my GED, so I'm not going to be in anybody's yearbook. Like I said, I came from a broken home. I dropped out of high school, joined the Marine Corps. I spent 22 years in the Marine Corps. I retired at the rank of gunnery sergeant. I moved to Lake Havasu City in 2000, and after serving 22 years, I was on the elected city council in Lake Havasu City. I spent 2 terms in the House of Representatives. This is my first term in the state Senate. When I was in the House, I was the chairman for the Military Affairs and Public Safety Committee, and I'm also in the Senate and the government, chairman of the Government Committee.
Thank you. Jem?
Good evening. My name is Jem Morgan. I am a 55-year-old Army veteran. I'm a Kingman resident and a lifelong social justice advocate. I grew up in poverty. I fell through the cracks in high school, did not graduate, and as a young adult, I worked 2 jobs and attended night school to earn the diploma that qualified me for the U.S. Army. After completing my service contract, I earned an associate's degree, a bachelor's degree, 2 post-baccalaureate certificates in family counseling, family life education, and a master's degree, and I've nearly completed my second associate's degree in early childhood education. My professional experience has been in foster care, social work, and public education for over 20 years, and I built a successful private counseling practice in Claremont, California, prior to moving to Arizona. Thank you.
Thank you. Leo?
Good evening. My name is Leo Biasucci. I'm a Republican candidate for the Arizona House, and I just wanted to say thank you all for being here today. Thank you to the Clean Elections for putting this on. I'm actually born and raised right here in Mojave County, so extremely proud of that. My parents came here from Italy in the 70s, and they came across legally, and which I'm proud of. And so I'm a first generation American, and I went to school at Lake Havasu High School, went off to the University of Arizona, got a degree in business administration and management, went to work for General Electric as well as Geico, and then eventually took over the family business. So I'm a small business owner, I'm a fiscal conservative, and I hope that you can vote for me on November 6th as your Republican candidate. Thank you.
Thank you. Gina?
Thank you. Good evening, and thank you all of you for coming out tonight. My name is Regina Cobb. I'm your Republican incumbent state representative. I've been in for 2 terms. So glad to see all of you here on a Columbus Day. And I know most of you probably had the day off, but here we are in the evening doing politics. It's great. I have been a resident of Kingman for the last 25 years, been a dentist and a business owner, and I have raised my 2 daughters here in public schools. I am now in the House. I've been vice chairman of health for the last 4 years. I'm chairman of health appropriations for the last 2 years, and I was on Ag, Water, and Land prior to that. I also am on the appropriations team that creates the budget out of the House. We have done a lot of great things over the last 4 years, and I hope to continue doing those in the future. Thank you.
Thank you. And Mary?
Yes, good evening, and thank you everyone for coming out, and thank you Clean Elections for putting this on. I'm very excited to be here. I have 40 years working in the corporate world, working for one of the world's largest information technology consulting companies. I started right out of high school. I started as a receptionist, and when I retired 37 years later, I retired as a senior executive, the highest level you could get in the company. Following that, I became the general manager and CEO of a small business technology company owned by a tribally owned entity in Eastern Oregon. I'm here because I want to represent all of the folks within our district, a very diverse and unique and complex district, and I think I'm qualified to do that. Thank you.
Thank you. At this time, we'll begin the portion of the debate where each candidate will answer the same question. Jem, we're going to start with you. You'll have 2 minutes to answer, and then once Sunny has answered, Jem will come back to you for 30 seconds. The question is this: do you consider climate change to be a serious threat to the economy and health of Arizona? And please explain your answer.
Absolutely, climate change is a threat to the economy of Arizona. Arizona is a dry, arid state. 12 of the 15 counties here in Arizona have been declared natural disaster zones because of the severity of the drought. This affects not only water sustainability, but the major industry here in Arizona as well. Agriculture is one of our 5 crown jewels, here in Arizona. So the drought, and it is affected. The more extreme our climate gets, the more dry. Sorry, my brain is. The more severe the drought is what I was trying to get out. And that will just continue to affect the economy here in Arizona. So climate change is real, it is science-based, and we need to take it seriously in terms of policy, legislative policy, how we save our resources. So it absolutely is going to affect the economy.
Thank you. Leo?
Yeah, I think we always need to making sure that our environment is protected and that we're doing the right things to protect our environment, like our water, our air. I think as a state we do a great job right now. I think we have the certain regulations in place that keep our air quality in check, keep our water safe. But we always can look at new areas and new ways to do that to make sure that we're continuing to do what we're doing now. The last thing we want to do is something like the Paris Accord situation where we're in a situation where it's not a fair playing field. And I think it was a great thing for us to pull out of that. It doesn't mean we're against protecting our environment or against protecting our water or our air. It just means that we want to do it responsibly. And it's something I think we're currently doing. And I think it's, we continue to do that and continue to be ahead of protecting our environment by doing things that are going to protect us. So, thank you.
Thank you. Gina?
Thank you. I think that when we're looking at climate change, we actually look at this more on a federal level than we do on a state level. But when we're looking at it, I think that you're talking about changes in our weather and what's happened because of some of the things that we do in Arizona or across the country or across the world that affect our climates. Right now, I think we're in a drought because of the Farmer's Almanac will, kind of confirm some of those issues of where we're at as far as our years into the drought. What we need to do more than anything is just protecting our environment. One of the things that I think affects us more than just climate change is the fact that we have in the past has not done a lot as far as protecting our water issues. And we have just been the land of the free. And I say this over and over again, and all of a sudden now it's free to everybody. Our water is now coming to a critical point, and we need to get in there and really fight for it. And I think that those are more of the issues that we need to address in the near future.
Thank you. And Mary?
Yeah, I agree with everything that's been said here, and especially water, right? Water is life for us. I think some things we need to do is look at ways that we can store our water when we do get it through monsoons or snow melt. The little bits that we are getting, we need to protect. From an agriculture perspective, we need to really look at the type of agriculture, how much agriculture we're allowing within our district. And, everybody in the state is in the same situation, looking for, where they can get water. And we have to come together as a state and look at what is the right thing to do for each of our regions. I do believe we have good air quality in our district. We have enough wind to keep things blowing in and blowing out on any given day. But I do think we also need to look at anything that is being used out in our agriculture farms for, either to help improve the growth or to limit the weeds, and making sure that that is environmentally safe and not, coming into our dirt and into our water. We need to look at those regulations and see if there are things that we can do to improve on them. Thank you.
Thank you. Sunny?
Yes, thank you. I'm not totally 100% convinced on the science for man-made climate change. I think that needs to be a little bit more studied. However, there's the versus the man-made versus natural. When a volcano erupts, it puts more contaminants in the air than even I think the mankind footprint. However, we need to keep our environment clean, air, water, so on and so forth. We have a great drought management plan here in Arizona. One of the things that I pushed through the legislature was industrial hemp, which is very ecologically friendly, uses less water, less pesticides, and if you would not, for it to grow, and it's more, like I said, ecologically friendlier. But like I said, one more minute? I have one more minute? Okay, cool. Well, let's stretch this out. Okay. But I'm not convinced on the whole science, the way it's been perpetrated. I think that needs to be a little bit studied. In the United States, we do a heck of a lot better job than China and the other foreign countries. They don't have any EPA regulations whatsoever on any of the products. So that's why they have dirty air. Of course, thank you. That's it.
Thank you. And Jim, 30 seconds.
Regina is right. We are in a form of natural cycle of drought. However, the extreme temperatures is driving our drought to be even more severe. And as I said, 12 of the 15 counties here in Arizona have been declared natural disaster zones. And there is a fight for the water, which is a state issue. But the counties need to be able to control their water resources a little bit better, in particular the groundwater. And those water rights laws pertaining to groundwater need to be changed so that counties can control and manage those resources. Thank you.
So let's do a water follow-up. Leo, we'll start with you. What can be done legislatively to help solve the water problem?
I think, obviously we all realize here in Mojave County how important our water is, and we dealt with that this last legislative session, especially with the MVIDD board, and they were trying to take the water from our area. And so I think as legislators, our job is to protect our district, to protect rural Arizona. And a lot of times, whether it's the water, HERF funds, SLIF funds, the bigger cities, the great state of Maricopa, they always feel like they are more important than we are. They feel like their growth is more important. They feel like they're gonna, their buildup is more important. And I think when you have legislators that represent rural Arizona, that are from here, that understand our issues, that understand how important water is for our own growth, that's how you get ahead of the game. This is how you have people like Gina who are fighting for our water. That's what you need in the legislation. So we need to put things into place, like storing our water. Like I said, we need to get ahead of the game. We got to make sure that we're fighting to keep our water here. And there are a lot of different methods we can do, whether it's desalinization or storage. We need to obviously get ahead of the game, but I think the number one key is make sure we're electing officials who are going to fight for us, who are going to fight for rural Arizona and represent us, not the bigger cities.
Thank you. Gina.
This is right down my wheelhouse. Over the last 2 years, actually over the last 4 years, one of the reasons I went into Ag, Water, and Land Committee when I first went into office is because I'm a dentist, I'm in healthcare, and I wanted to know more about what we have and what our resources are and how it can help our community. And I know how important water, ag, all those things are within our community. So I went into that to learn. What I found out was that I didn't know a lot. And so as I get into the issue a lot deeper, I've been going to many of the drought contingency program meetings that are down in Phoenix. I will be going to one tomorrow afternoon. It usually is twice a week, so I've been traveling to Phoenix twice a week all summer long trying to get down to those meetings, and they have subcommittee meetings. Those are all informative to me. I've already gone through many, many courses on water, but yet I still don't know a lot about it. Over the last 2 years, I've been trying to run a bill that's been what we call a rural management area. And what it necessarily does is it gives an advisory committee from each of our communities, La Paz and Mojave County, and allows them to have a voice and go to the governor and say, hey, this is what we would recommend as far as recharging, how many pumps are being pumping, and how often they should be pumped and how much they can be pumped. I come into a lot of opposition from other legislators, not the governor, but the other legislators, and some of those haven't even got hearings. And we're hoping, though, because of that whole group function that we had this last year, where we had over 300 people in this room here, that we showed the legislators that we are serious about our issues and our problems and that we need to address them. Thank you.
Thank you. Mary.
So again, finding ways to preserve our water, to be able to collect what we're getting from our few monsoons and what little snow melt has got to be a priority. Another priority has got to be, putting restrictions on corporations that want to come in and buy up the land out here and have endless use to the water that are in our aquifers within the Kingman Basin especially. We are only a voice of 3 down in the great state of Maricopa, as everybody has talked about. So we've got to make sure that we've got legislators up here that understand the issues and can come up with ideas and programs that are going to help protect what is here today. And Representative Cobb is absolutely right. I am learning so much about this every day. There's so much more that we don't know other than on the surface, and we have to get down deeper into understanding that. We have to understand the rights of all the users of the Colorado River water, to understand and make sure that it's being used and allocated fairly and equitably, and so that we all have water over a long-term period. We've got some agriculture businesses in our district that are using unlimited amounts of water right now trying to reach baselines. And we've got to be able to regulate and say, you can only have so much acreage with this type of agriculture using this much water over these number of years. That's just one idea that I have. Because again, we only have 3 votes. And we've got to be careful on how we're being represented when we're up against the large majority of the people in this state who want our water.
Thank you. Sunny.
Yes, water issues are one of the most complex issues that we deal on the state level. I mean, it's treated and it's got compacted through international compacts, interstate compacts. We have treated with the tribes, so even the federal government has to get involved on those kind of things. We have property rights that we need to protect, and a lot of this stuff is legally protected already. And we need to do a lot to protect us, because Phoenix, Tucson, with the INAs and the IMAs and the EMAs and all the other alphabets that they come up with, it gets real tough because we have to protect our water because they think they can just stick a straw in it. As far as the Mojave Valley Irrigation Water District, in 2013, my very first term, I did introduce legislation that would have been able to put a homeowner on that board, so at least there would have been some equal footing here, so at least another voice locally, because 3 out of the 5 board members that exist right now on that board do not even reside in Mojave County. So, I tried to get that done in 13. As a matter of fact, I took the same identical language and I tried to amend it on a bill this year. I was only able to get a hearing on it, but it's just amazing how the farmers, especially the ones down in Yuma, saw that as a threat, and once again they pushed back. But I think what's happening with seeing what's going on here in Mojave County, sitting with my colleague, a Democrat colleague from Yuma, I told her, I said, when Mojave County falls next, you guys are next. So we need to start paying attention. It's about building relationships with other legislators, rural, because this is not a partisan issue. This is a real-life human issue. So it's about building relationships, particularly with rural Arizona representatives, and we need to fight the urban people in the state of Maricopa.
Thank you. Jim.
Okay. So the question that was asked is about what can we do legislatively with respect to the water issue. So the drought contingency plan is certainly one of those legislative issues. Business licenses should be regulated with respect to water consumption. So that needs to be reviewed when we're giving business licenses. New development legislation can be introduced so that xeriscaping can be integrated with new development. Zoning ordinances, this is the biggest state issue that needs to be addressed legislatively. I hear and I understand that our incumbents have been working to fight for the water here in Mojave County, but our district also includes La Paz County. I sat at the La Paz County Board of Supervisor meetings a few meetings ago and watched their Board of Supervisors vote to approve the sale or the lease of a great big chunk of water from La Paz County to the Cap, and that's a 25-year lease. So we need to address both counties, not just one. But the thing is that I understand that what has been happening is our legislators have been fighting the water issue, but not one piece of legislation has been introduced that would fundamentally change those groundwater water rights laws. And that's for our counties, that's what needs to be changed, because that's what allows these foreign investors to come out into our aquifer and just suck our aquifer dry with no accountability. Until those water rights laws are changed, that will continue, because our County Board of Supervisors keeps throwing up their hands saying there's nothing we can do because of those state laws. And I don't understand why our legislators are not putting in those pieces of legislation, and that's
Thank
what
you.
I will do differently.
Thank you. And Leo, your 30 seconds.
Yeah, I personally don't believe that putting more regulations on businesses is going to answer the issue, because I don't believe in more regulation as being the answer. I think what we need to do is obviously leave the zoning up to the districts, the counties, local control. What the legislation should be doing is finding out ways to develop recharge stations. You have brackish water, which is 600 million acre feet of water that's available that we can move into and try to get control of. So I think as a legislation, we need to actually find ways to
Thank you.
protect and save our water.
Thank you. I am going to remind the audience, no matter how much you may agree or disagree with anything being said, please refrain from applause and other outbursts, because any of the closed captioning, any of the noises, it makes it harder for the closed captioning to actually happen. So thank you for your cooperation as a good audience member. So we will start with Gina on this one. Do you support rural clinics in our small communities, and how would you make this happen?
Now, let me understand the question. Rural clinics, you mean rural medical clinics?
I am reading the card as written from our audience member, so I would say you can interpret it as
ever,
you wish.
how I want to.
Do you support rural clinics in our small communities, and how would you make this happen?
I'm not sure exactly what they're talking about with rural clinics. We have clinics all over the place, and we have private clinics. We have all kinds of clinics that we have with the hospital, occupational clinics. We have behavioral health clinics that we just started up with the opioid just this last year. We have a new behavioral health clinic that's here in Kingman, and we're going to be opening up a new behavioral health clinic in Bullhead City before January 1st, something that I've worked very hard with the governor. But a rural clinic, I'm not sure exactly what they're meaning on that. We do have satellite practices sometimes where a private practice can actually move into a smaller community and go in 1 day a week or 2 days a week. I tried this actually within Meadview, and it didn't work. So on some, you have to have the need, and you have to have the patients that actually want to come to that area rather than coming to town and doing their shopping and their other things that they were doing. And that's why they didn't end up utilizing a clinic inside of Meadview. So, I think we try all different things in medicine to get out, do outreach to the patients. And hopefully we're doing all the right things.
Thank you. Mary?
Yeah, I'd like to see more remote rural clinics, right? She's right about clinics being available in Kingman and Bullhead City and Lake Havasu. We don't have those same services when you look up in Colorado City or Scenic or Lakeview, and clearly not down in the La Paz County. It's very difficult for individuals who are on fixed incomes to drive 50 or 75 miles one way to get coverage. And it's not just health, physical health, it's also dental needs and vision needs that people need. We need to find a way to incent nurse practitioners or internships to commit to a 5-year commitment into some of these remote rural areas, and have them commit to being there for 3 to 5 years so that they can get to know the client base. And if you get into a remote rural area, they can then serve some of those closer ones. I think what we're doing, again, in Mojave County is great, but what I've heard going door to door across this district is accessibility is extremely difficult, and for most people in the very remote rural areas, they see it as an expense, and they just can't afford it. So I would like to see us look at implementing more.
Thank you. Sunny?
Yes, sure. I'd like to see some more clinics out in the rural areas, but we have to figure out a way to get that funded. I didn't realize that anybody was stopping anybody from opening up a dental practice or a vision practice or even medical practice anywhere in the county. I don't see if there's anybody hindering that other than funding and obviously supply demand.
Thank you. Jem?
Okay. So as Mary was talking about, we've had a lot of conversations with constituents, particularly out in the remote rural areas, which is where we've spent the bulk of our time, because they are typically the areas that have been abandoned even the most and neglected in the districts. We definitely, there is affordability for healthcare is an issue, but accessibility is the issue. You know, out in Meadview, they had a clinic once a week. The nurse practitioner would come out to Meadview, and that nurse practitioner passed away, and then there was nothing to replace. And so, you know, when we talked with the people out there, it's a hardship for them because they're so far away. So it's complicated. We have fixed incomes. We have geography, we have distances, we have a lot of complicated issues when it comes to healthcare across the board, meaning mental health and healthcare and dental, that whole panoply of health services. And we need to do a better job. Specifically, one of the other areas where we really need to do a better job is with our veterans. Particularly down in La Paz County is the most underserved county that I have seen. There are veterans who are living homeless out in the cactus and the sand down in La Paz outside. They live half the year on BLM land, not legally, because they have untreated PTSD, and that's the way that they are best managing their symptoms because they're so overwhelmed. But there is no services out there, and we just really need to start, because it's not about throwing money. We have to creatively re-envision how we're going to service the people who are in our districts, and we absolutely need to do a better job for our homeless veterans down in La Paz.
Thank you. Leo?
Yeah, you know, kind of speaking with Gina and as well as Mary, they talk about it's the rural areas. I think this question, I believe, is really based on is the fact that, you know, they're right. When you go to Centennial Park, Colorado City, some of these cities, they have to drive to St. George to get care. And it's difficult because it's hard to get doctors to want to move to those areas to provide care because it's a money thing. I mean, bottom line, this is a business, and they need to see if it's worth it for them to be out there. So I think it's important that we do try to find a way, whether it is, you know, trying to, you know, have doctors or nurse practitioners go in that area, whether it's once or twice a week. But it's tough because, you know, I believe that it's up to them, up to the doctors to decide where they want to be. As in regards to veterans, I think, you know, just now we've seen a change. President Trump is implemented and talked about how vets should be able to see whoever they want to see as their care, because it's a problem when you have vets trying to go to Prescott or Vegas from rural areas to get care. These are people that give the ultimate sacrifice for our freedoms, and they should be able to go to whoever they want to go to get that care. And I think once that is implemented, once that's put into place, it's going to solve a lot of these problems that our vets are dealing with right now.
And Gina, your 30 seconds.
Well, a couple of things I wanted to address is one thing, I did co-sponsor some legislation in the past on telemedicine, and that really does help address some of the issues that we have in some of the rural areas, because we get somebody out there and actually do that, and increasing the providers that we have in those areas also. Incentivizing those providers are usually done by a federally qualified underserved area, and that needs to be modified at the federal level. That definition is incorrect. The other thing is that in Colorado City, we—
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Next question, and Mary, we'll start this one with you. What are your views on Prop 305, and please describe your position fully.
So my position on 305, which is education proposition, I don't believe that our schools are funded to the levels that they should be. I think they should be fully funded to the levels that they were in 2008 at a minimum, and bring it forward. The way in which I would like to see us start looking at to get us there is not expanding the voucher program at this time. We need to keep our tax dollars in our public schools. Our charter schools are also publicly funded, and I would like to see them have the same transparency on reporting as our public schools do. As you may or may not know, charter schools are often owned, run by a third party or by a board, and the assets that are purchased with your tax dollars that go to that charter school can change at any given time. They can close, and those assets belong to the owners, not back to the public. But I think we can look at funding without raising taxes. I think we need to be collecting the taxes that are out there that we're not collecting. We have corporate tax credits going out to 75% of the largest corporations in the state that only pay $50 a year in taxes. And I think we need to relook at that to make that a better fair and playing field for our schools. But I will be voting no on Proposition 305. I don't know that it's totally the right answer, but it's the right answer at this time, and we need to go back and further refine it before we make a vote on it.
Thank you. Sunny.
Yes, well, first off, I need to set the record straight. Our 2008 spending levels for K-12 education was $5.2 billion. In 2018, our fiscal FY 2018, we're at $5.3 billion. So for 2019 fiscal year, we'll be at $5.9 billion. Over the last 2 years, in FY 17, last year's budget, we put $352 million more money into K-12 education than we did the year before. This year, in the 2018 budget, passing the 20% pay raise for teachers over the 3-year period, we added $100 million more money into the district additional assistance, and we added an additional $64 million into the classroom site fund. So to say that we need to go back to 2008 levels, I don't think moving backwards is the solution. However, I'm a firm believer in parental authority. I think there's room for private school. I think there's room for charter schools, and I also believe at public schools. I'm the one who I also supported full-day kindergarten, believe it or not. Once again, I think it's parental authority. You're the taxpayer. You're the parent. I think you should have a choice where you send your kid. Being forced to just send your kids to one particular school or school district by the government, they're going to take away your parental authority. I mean, that's tyranny. You should have a right to send your kid wherever you want to send them, especially if they're coming from a failing school. The ESA program that's been going on for the last couple of years in Mojave County, La Paz County, District 5, we've only had 5 students in the ESA program to date. I am a yes on 305.
Thank you. Jem?
So on 305, I am definitely a no vote on 305. This is about expanding the empowerment scholarship accounts universally so that everyone has access to them. Now, when this program was first initiated, it was to address specific students with specific needs that were not able to be met in the school systems that were already in place. That's what they were put there for. So we were trying to address the issues with those children that couldn't be addressed. Well, now it's being expanded universally so that any child can have access to it. Now let's look at LD5. In LD5, we don't, I'm all for parental authority, but we don't really have choice. We're talking about, if you look at our school district, or not our school district, but our legislative district, you've got children living out in areas where there is no choice for them. And to open up these empowerment scholarships accounts to any student, it is going to siphon off money that's going to go into the publicly funded schools, which includes the charter schools. So our schools are already struggling because they don't have the proper budget to meet their needs. And now we're going to siphon more money off so that the students can go to private schools and religious institutions. That's not where our taxpayer money is intended to go, and it's going to siphon off the funding that is supposed to go into our public education system. So absolutely no. We need to repeal those tax credits, though, on the 75% of the corporations who are paying no more than $50 in taxes, because it needs to be a fair and equitable tax burden for
Thank you.
everybody.
Thank you. Leo?
Yeah, for me, Prop 305 is about what's doing best for our children. You know, I'm a product of public schools. I went to public schools, went to University of Arizona. My mom taught for 30 years, uncle was superintendent of schools for 10 years. So I am behind public schools. I support public schools. A majority of our children go to public schools. But there are children that learn at different levels, different speeds, different environments. And we need to take care of them as well. They need to have a quality education, however it may be, whether it's private, homeschooling. It's about doing what's best for our children. And so for me, I think that when you allow this to happen, you allow children that are in the rural, remote areas, for them to be taught, to have the resources, provide them with resources to be able, for them to get a quality education. That's what it's all about for me, because it's for making sure that our children are receiving that education, a quality education, so that they become, obviously, they can move into our society and be successful. And so that's why I'm a huge supporter of ESAs and Prop 305. Now, the one thing I had a problem with was with oversight and accountability, because I believe that if you are receiving money, you need to have that for homeschooling, charter schooling. They need to have the same accountability as public schools. And this bill, because it's off of SB 1431, which is a Senate bill, that has that in there. That's having the accountability for these schools, for the private school and charter schools. They have that in there to make sure the money is being spent properly and the children are being taught effectively. So I am a yes.
Thank you. Gina?
Yeah, let's go back a few years. You know, to begin with, I got to tell you, both my daughters were raised in public school. I'm one of 14 kids, so I was raised in a public school. And, you know, I totally believe that our public education is good, but it also needed to have some competition to raise the bar up. And I think that what the charter schools and the empowerment scholarships have done is raise the bar. They've allowed competition within there, and has made the public schools kind of come up to the plate and become even better than they were before. And that's a good thing. Now, for the first 2 years that I was in office, I did not vote for any expansion of the empowerment scholarships. And the reason I didn't do that is because I didn't want to expand a program that did not have any accountability, any transparency, or any kind of cap on it. One of the things that this Senate bill had originally done didn't have that in there. As it worked its way through the process, and as normal bills do work their way through the process, accountability, transparency, a cap on things. If we vote no on this, there's no cap on empowerment scholarships. It's uncappable. And so what this bill did was gave us all those things. It might expand it, but an expansion, actually in our district, right now we have 5 kids out of all our school districts that we have in Mojave and La Paz County. We have 5 children that are in this empowerment scholarship. So it doesn't mean a whole lot to Mojave County. What we're talking about is more in the metropolitan area than it is in the urban areas. But it does give accountability, transparency, where we could see where that money is being spent at. And that's what I asked for when I originally voted yes for this bill.
Thank you. And Mary, your 30 seconds.
Yeah, so I think, yes, adding these other options adds competition, but it also creates burden when these other schools can define how many children they take, how many teachers per classroom, and everybody else gets pushed to the district public school that now is running in the 35 to 40 students to 1 teacher ratio. We don't have enough counselors to support it, and we don't have the infrastructure to make our schools viable.
Thank you. So this will be the last question for our first half round, and we will start with you, Sunny. What will you do legislatively to help veterans in all of LD5?
Oh. Well, I think my voting record speaks for itself. I've been the #1 veterans advocate in the state. Was inducted in the Arizona Veterans Hall of Fame. I received the Copper Shield Award. It's kind of a hard question. The fight's not over. There's more things that need to be done for our veterans. I passed a bill through the session last 2 years ago that would actually be able to give nonprofit organizations another funding stream. Of course, I got to get the Department of Gaming to get out of the way, but that's something that we're working out those details from bureaucratic resistance. Like I said, anytime a veteran has an issue and they get a hold of me, especially if it's something dealing with the VA, I've reached out to my congressmen and even our U.S. senators, and we've gotten some things accomplished, especially pointing out the flaws in the Veterans Choice Program, where veteran had to go referred all the way to Phoenix, or excuse me, to Prescott. If they couldn't get you in there within the 30 days, then it would trigger the Card Choice Program, and then of course the Card Choice Program would say, well, you are eligible for this, but since you live within a 40-mile radius of a VA facility, i.e. Lake Havasu, or even sometimes here in Kingman, it actually nullified the card choice. Thank goodness we had some legislation get through the U.S. House of Representatives and the President signing the Veterans Accountability Act, where we can also hold some of those bureaucrats in the VA accountable, and if they're not doing a good job, we fire them instead of just passing them around from another organization to another. So the Card Choice Program is working a lot better. It still needs to be done more, but I'm the biggest, and ask pretty much every veterans organization in this district and even throughout the state if Sonny Borelli really supports veterans, and the answer is yes. May not hit the ball every time, but I'm getting it done.
Thank you. Jim?
Well, I have a different perspective of veterans in LD5 because I've been down in La Paz and I've been fighting actually for those homeless veterans who are living in the cactus in the sand underneath the current senator's watch. So we really have to do much better with our veterans. The question is legislatively, what can we do to help our veterans in LD5? Well, the biggest veteran issue that I have found is that homeless veterans issue down in La Paz. I've been to the La Paz Board of County Supervisors twice to make the issue on at least public record. We need to, because the veterans is more of a federal issue, and this is what makes it a little bit difficult because the VA is, it's a federal interjection into our state system. However, we can fund state programs that can augment where the VA services are not provided. And that is something that I would absolutely fight to achieve. We need to have PTSD services. The Veterans Court program that's down in La Paz, there isn't even a veteran involved with the organizing people. So if you're not a veteran, you don't understand. So legislatively, we can help to fill in those gaps. And one thing I do want to clarify is, Leo, I've heard Leo talk several times about the Veterans Choice Program. He's not a veteran, so he doesn't know. That program actually started under Obama, and this administration did continue it because I think that it was temporary. But for those veterans down in La Paz, that program doesn't help them because whether it's Veterans Choice or the VA, there are still no services for them. So the Veterans Choice just is not the big answer for our veterans. But we absolutely need to do something for those veterans. Thank you.
Thank you. Leo?
Yep. Again, I talked about this earlier about the Veterans Choice, and I think that is an option that obviously President Trump, could say extended, but I think I'm a firm believer in that being available to every veteran without restrictions. I think when you do that, when you allow a veteran in La Paz County to go to their primary doctor for a flu shot or an x-ray, instead of having to go to the VA clinic, it's going to help everybody. It's going to help our economy because now these vets are going to go to their local doctors instead of going to the VA, and it's going to free up the VA to do procedures and take care of patients that need it the most, the ones that are more serious situations. So I think that opening that up is a great thing. I think that's going to help all our veterans. And Jem mentioned Veterans Court. I mean, that's another fantastic program that's in place right now. I mean, Havasu, I've been to many of the graduations, and that program is something that's allowing veterans a second chance. Like I said, these are people who have given their ultimate sacrifice, that have fought for our freedoms. And so anything that's going to allow them to get back into our society, to be, to get the care they need is really important to me. We have over 20,000 veterans that call District 5 home. And so I think it's a priority for us to make sure that they're taken care of.
Thank you. Gina?
Well, I think when you see down the line here, you see that everybody has kind of touched on some of the issues that we have with veterans. My father was a Navy veteran, and before he died, he lived in a very remote part of Nevada and had to have someone come pick him up with a bus and take him to Salt Lake City to get his veteran services. That's why privatizing your health care is one of the most important things that we need to do, and it is a federal issue. But I think we could team up with our federal partners and try to work through some of these issues. The health issues are some of the issues that I think that veterans are struggling with the most, besides the homeless. And one of the difficulties they have is that, like the Veteran Center that we have here, you don't have x-rays. You could do your basic healthcare needs here, exams, x-rays, lab work, those kind of things. And then if they have to have something more extensive and they have to be transferred, they could be transferred into Prescott for the other needs that they have. I think that some of the things that we're doing right now is at the state legislature is we've increased the number of counselors so they know how to get their benefits and go through all of that. Down here, we're just opening up the Jerry Ambrose Center down here. That is a public-private partnership, and they're going to actually house veterans in there, but they also have counselors and people to do counseling for PTSD, have counseling for their services. That's going to be a phenomenal area when it gets done, and they're hoping to have that done before July of this next year.
Thank you.
So I
Mary?
agree. I think a lot of good things are happening in Mojave County. And I agree that we've been neglecting La Paz. And as a legislator for LD5, that includes La Paz County. I think we need more outreach, abilities to the remote rural areas. Again, if you're in Kingman, Havasu, Bullhead City, it doesn't seem as overwhelming when you need those services. Being in La Paz County also and spending quite a bit of time with our Native Americans there, they have difficulty getting resources and help from the VA. I think that is a group that we need to focus on. Overall, in general, I think La Paz County is neglected, and if we could just take half of what Mojave County has done to be successful and apply it to La Paz County, then we can improve this entire district. But we need to get more resources and more outreach. And one thing that I learned just today was that from the Arizona Department of Veterans Services, there is only one employee for the entire state to serve the 22 tribes that we have within Arizona. And we've got to take care of our indigenous people as well. Thank you.
Thank you. And Sunny, your additional 30 seconds.
Yeah, so to that point, the representative for the Native Americans, that was something we passed through to get some representation up there, up in the Navajo country, and it's more than one. We actually got that through this year. But, as far as La Paz County goes, unfortunately, they have a lot of vets that choose to live out there. The resources are out there. We've got to try to bring them in. Some of them just want to disengage. They don't want to be brought in. But it takes teamwork with all the other organizations that are out there, the VFW, the American Legion,
Thank you.
I have to say something
Thank
about
you,
the
Sonny.
Veteran Court in
Thank you,
La Paz
Sonny.
County, started in Mojave.
Thank you, Sunny.
Okay.
So your response was 30 seconds. Trying to keep the process fair. So at this time, we will transition to the second part of the debate, where each candidate will receive a separate question with 1 minute to respond. Additionally, on some of the questions, the other candidates will have an optional 30 seconds to address the question or the topic. I will announce which questions have that 30 seconds. And so please wait for me to acknowledge you if you do want that 30 seconds. So audience members, you can still submit questions via note cards and direct them to specific questions. Remember, we do screen questions for attacks, for brevity, for duplications, etc. So raise them high if you have them so that our volunteer can deliver them to me. So Mary, we will start with you. This will only be for you. What do you think can be done to protect against data breaches?
Coming from the information technology sector, data breaches are risky. We have to have protocols in place, controls in place. We need to have a trained security team, and that we're looking for malware or other breaches coming in and stopping those when they first begin to penetrate. There's external penetration and internal penetrations into your network systems. With things going to the cloud is a great place to store things. The problem is the road traveling from the ground to the cloud is not protected, and that is where most of the data breaches occur, is the transfer of data up to the cloud and data back to the cloud. So we need our companies to continue to evolve that technology to protect that data as it's moving around.
Thank you. Gina, this is for you, and it will have an optional 30 seconds. So how would you respond to the idea of an interstate water distribution system similar to the National Interstate Highway System? Gina, we'll start with you, and then anyone who wants the 30 seconds, I will call on you.
I actually would not be opposed to that, and I've had a few constituents, and honestly, I think that's brought about a lot of discussion with that. The problem is the funding source. Where do you go for the funding source? We're already trillions of dollars in debt in the federal government, so you have to get your states to come in and be cooperative in this. We're having a difficulty right now, even our states being cooperative with the drought contingency program. So once we get through our drought contingency program, I think that we can start looking at something else. And honestly, it would be a great thing, because there are some areas, some states that have overabundance of water, and then other states like our state that are in a drought situation.
So for the optional 30 seconds, so far I have seen Jim. Again, raise your hand if you want to comment. So Jim, 30 seconds.
So the idea is a great idea if we have unlimited water to share. But in terms of Arizona, what I would like to see first is that we address our own water rights issues right here, because we still are privileging corporate interests over the people's interest. Corporations are being privileged while water, which is a basic human right for life, we as people, we do not have the same rights to access to the water.
Thank you. Going once, going twice. Okay, Leo, we'll move on to your question. So an audience member is curious about what laws recently have been passed at the legislature to help rural counties preserve their waters.
So, right now, whoa, is it on? Very good. Okay. With the water issues currently we obviously had an issue with the MVIDD board trying to come in, and they were trying to obviously dictate where our water was going. They were trying to move it to Phoenix and trying to determine that it was more important there for them than for us. And I think we did obviously a lot of things out here. One thing I want to comment on is our supervisor did a great job. They bought a bunch of land that would protect our water source and put some skin in the game for us. So I think as the legislation, I think we got to do more. I think we have to put laws in place. For example, you have foreign companies coming in, using our water, growing alfalfa, shipping it out, tax-free. So I think there's a lot more that we need to do and get done this next session.
Okay, so I was not going to do an optional 30 seconds on this. So I'm going to proceed on with the next question. This will have the optional 30 seconds. Jem, we'll start with you. How do you propose to in Arizona to attract highly qualified educators to our state?
So highly qualified educators, again, it's complex because the human factor is people come to areas for a variety of reasons. One of them, most importantly, is a salary that affords a quality of life and where you only have to work one job rather than working two jobs in order to pay your mortgage. Now, we here in Mojave and La Paz County, we have a reasonable living labor, what's that? So quality of life is important. I know there are educators who come here for that quality of life. We have clean air, but to attract them, we must have benefits, we must have salary, and we need to have the respect within the state that grants that for them. For example, here in Arizona, our legislators have voted to.
Thank you.
So is there 1 minute on these questions?
These are 1-minute questions. And then when we have the announced 30 seconds, those who want to take part will get 30 seconds. Okay? So Mary, I see your hand.
If I could, I'll continue on. I think in order to be able to attract talent for our educators, we have to be able to offer them a good compensation package that's fully rounded, that isn't just about base compensation, but it's all around, including benefits and time off and the total package. They also have to be able to be attracted to come into a state that is going to be supported, and they're going to be supported, and what they're doing as educators is supported, and not have 75,000 people in the Capitol protesting.
Thank you. Gina.
Well, I want to respond to a few things that we've done over the last few years is the Teachers Academy. We've had professionals being able to come in and actually be teachers by doing a teacher certification, and that is somebody that has a 4-year degree in another field that actually can come in. Like I have a degree in secondary education in chemistry, so I can go in and teach chemistry, but I have to do student teaching prior to that. We have seen a little bit of a failure in that, and we want to make sure that we give them more of a boot camp.
Thank you. Leo?
Yeah, just to touch on that as well, I think, like Gina said, that we've done a great job in the state, especially this last year with trying to get more teachers with the 20 by 20. And what Gina was talking about, the boot camp, is when you have these professionals come in who have a degree in business or whatever, nursing, and they could teach classes, they don't learn the classroom skills, how to run a classroom, how to manage a classroom. So that's something I hope that we can do this next legislative session. Gina and I have talked about putting a boot camp together so these professionals can actually learn how to run a class, and then that way they're more effective in the classroom.
Thank you. Okay. Sunny, this question is for you, and just for you, audience member is curious how many town halls you have held in La Paz County, and what are your plans forward?
Well, trying to get the town hall together in that rural area is really difficult. What I've been doing is I've been working with local constituents on a lot of their issues out in the Wendon, Salome area, even in Baus, meeting with homeowners there, some business owners there, and even working with our county supervisors, even down to meeting with veterans groups down in Quartzsite. So I haven't done any town halls.
Okay,
Yeah.
Thank you.
I don't think I could fill a room. Look.
Okay, thank you. So Mary, this question is for you. Audience member is curious, what has prepared you to be a state legislator?
Well, I have 40 years working in the corporate world, where I've worked with small businesses, medium-sized businesses, large businesses. I've worked across all industries. I've worked with a very diverse group of clients, executives, nationalities, and I think bringing those together add to my attributes to being an effective listener, an effective communicator, and I really believe I'm a strong problem solver. I believe in working together to identify what a problem is, to work together to find a solution, and work together to implement a solution to reach the outcomes that the problem proposed in the first place. At this point, going into this, it's not about an R or a D, it's about bringing innovation and solutions to problems.
Thank you. Marla, I'm going to ask you to turn a little bit so I can see you easier. Gina, this next question is for you. Audience member noticed that you're running traditional funding and would like to know what went into your thought process for traditional versus clean elections funding.
Well, I can tell you what went into my thought process is that my thought is that we should not be using taxpayers' money for an official to be running for office. And so I chose to run traditional.
Okay, thank you. So this question is for Leo, and I'll have the optional 30 seconds for the rest of you. On a scale of 1 to 10, what is your priority in providing alternative renewable energy sources to AZ customers? And please explain your position.
Sure. I think, there's no doubt that we want to move towards more renewable energies at some point. I'm going to touch real quick on Prop 127. I don't agree with 127. I think that when you mandate renewable energies on a state, especially when it's coming from somebody out of California who's trying to dictate what we do here, is not what we stand for here in the state of Arizona. We shouldn't be told what to do or how to do it. The renewable energies will work themselves into the equation. We already have things in place right now for these companies that provide our energy to be dependent on renewable energies. That's already in place. But to make it mandatory is something I don't agree with. I think we all know, we all agree that'll be the future, but we need to make sure that the technology is there, that it's going to be cheap, because if we mandate it, the first thing that's going to happen is all the rates are going to go up, and you all, and our constituents, will be paying for them to upgrade their infrastructure. And that means higher rates for all of you, and that's something I'm just not in favor of.
Thank you. Optional 30 seconds. Mary, I see you.
Yeah, we might not be in favor of somebody from out of state coming in and trying to mandate or direct what we do with renewable energy. But we're allowing the Koch brothers to come in and put a lot of money behind APS to fight moving to renewable energy. We need to have a plan. We need to execute to that plan and not wait. The time is now, and we have to put something together to make this viable for our future. It's just a beginning.
Thank you. Sunny?
My ideas for energy is we need hydro, solar, coal, clean coal, and we need gas. I don't believe in mandating and altering our state constitution that actually is going to break all of your bank is a good idea.
Gina, and then Jem.
Yes, I agree with Sunny on that last part. We're talking about amending the Constitution and putting in renewable energy into the Constitution, and there's going to be an extra tax on you as the taxpayers. And I don't know about you, but I don't remember electing Tom Steyer into the legislature and making rules for us.
Thank you, and Jem.
Well, we didn't elect the Koch brothers either. And, the amending the Constitution is every 100 number of any proposition. So 125 and 126 that they all support is also amending the Constitution. In terms of Sunny's comments about hydro, coal, clean coal, there is no such thing as clean coal. And those are all, none of those are renewable energies. This is the bottom line. They're not, it's not a sustainable way of managing our resources. And we have to have sustainable management.
Shem, an audience member is curious if you support Prop 207, the proposition that was taken off the ballot for raising the top tax rate.
Yes, I did. I would have supported that because it was not going to raise taxes for everybody. And let's look at the facts. We're talking about the top 1% of the wealthiest people in the state. And I myself am not going to vote on any bill that will raise taxes on the middle class. I'm a disabled veteran. My own income is extremely limited. Our district has a huge population of limited income people. And so we need to have a fair and equitable, as soon as I say fair and equitable distribution of tax burden, there's half the people in the state ruffle their feathers and think that I'm some socialist. It's about the common goal in the social contract that we have for everybody. It is incumbent upon us to educate our children, and that is mandated by taxes in our Constitution, and we need to have a fair and equitable distribution.
Thank you. Sunny, this next one is for you, and it will have an additional 30 seconds for the rest of you. What is your position on the support of women's issues, especially the women's right to choose?
Say that, repeat that again, please.
What is your position on the support of women's issues, especially the women's right to choose?
Right to choose what?
What is done with
Where
their
they want
bodies?
to send their kids to school, I mean. I am pro-choice. I choose life. I don't take the position to judge anybody on what they do. That's between them and their maker. Like I said, I'm pro-life. I don't believe in abortion. However, if it's for the life of the mother or the child, there are certain extenuating circumstances. That's not my position to judge. I just don't believe the taxpayer should have to foot that bill.
Okay. Thank you. Anyone want the optional 30 seconds? Okay. So this will be the last round of directed questions. And Mary, we'll start with you. Do you support the legalization of marijuana? Why or why not? And we will do the 30 seconds on this one.
Yes, I absolutely support the legalization of marijuana, cannabis, hemp, whatever portion of it you want to funnel out. I think it's been years. We've tried to say it's illegal. There's so many good usages. We shouldn't make it difficult. We should allow people to have a limited number of plants that they grow in their own home that is safe for their consumption. And yes, 100% support legalization of marijuana.
Optional 30 seconds. Jem, I see you. Then Gina.
Yes, I also support legalization of marijuana, particularly because veterans need to be able to have access to marijuana, and the VA does not support or provide prescriptions or any. They just don't support it at all. So we need to do that. Also, by legalizing it, it opens up the formulary for insurance companies to be able to provide that. Just like any other medicine, it needs to be treated the same.
Thank you.
When we're talking about, I am not for legalizing marijuana, and actually I want to do more regulation on the medical marijuana side. When you're talking about medicine, we're not regulating it like a medicine. We don't know how much THC is in each gummy bear that they have. And the fact that there are pesticides that are used oftentimes in the crops, and we don't even know what kind of pesticides, and we're using it as an anti-carcinogenic. I mean, we might be giving them more cancer-causing materials than they are getting with the medical marijuana.
Thank you. Leo.
Yeah, another big thing that nobody really understands is, when I asked law enforcement, when I asked the chief of police in Havasu, Kingman, and I asked them, what you think about legalization of marijuana, their number one issue is right now you don't have a test. If somebody gets pulled over or there's a workplace accident and they get tested to see if they're impaired, there's no test to say if that marijuana is in their system for a day, an hour, or 30 days. So now you're tying up the court systems, you're making it more difficult for our law enforcement. So until that's done, I don't even think we can entertain that idea, because until that happens,
Thank you.
Nothing's.
Thank you. And Sunny.
Well, first off, I think it's kind of interesting, kind of contradictory, because we have medical marijuana, and then people are saying we need to legalize a medicine to go out and recreate with, which is why we have a big-time opiate problem. But as far as hemp goes, it's rope, not dope. You can't get high on it. But I'm not in favor of legalizing. We have a medical marijuana program that is really a disaster, that we try to do some reform on it. But the Dispensary Association stood in the way of any type of testing just to identify the harmful pesticides that's in this stuff. Thank you.
Next question. So this will be for Gina, and then 30 seconds for those who want to comment. With an increase in retirees moving to Mojave County, what do you think can be done to help accommodate their needs?
I think we're accommodating the retirees every day that we work. We have a lot of senior benefits, and one of the things that I have, I think more than anything is that because we have all the retirees come in here, what ends up happening is the tax burden is put on our property tax people. And I think that that's an issue because we have a lot of snowbirds coming into the community. I would love to see some way to be able to equalize that tax burden across our counties, La Paz and Mojave counties, and not just on the property owners and our senior property owners.
Thank you. Anyone want the 30 seconds, Jim?
With respect to equalizing that tax burden, again, we need to go back to 75% of our corporations, our wealthiest profit-making corporations in the state are paying no more than $50 in taxes. So yes, that was a huge issue, particularly in La Paz in the people on the fixed incomes. So to relieve some of those tax burdens for those who are the most vulnerable financially, then we need to equalize that tax burden by pulling those tax credits.
Thank you. Sunny, then
Yes,
Mary.
a lot of folks are moving here from other states because our tax base is really low, and I think we need to lower it even more, especially those that are on retirement pensions. Because if they're paying taxes on their pensions, we need to keep those taxes low because that helps them because they are on a fixed income. So this way they can have more of their spendable income in their savings that they've saved all their lives for, and invested in all these big evil corporations that they were able to have a retirement. Thank you.
Thank you. Mary?
Yeah, I am retired and I am on a fixed pension retirement, so changing my tax base would cause an undue hardship on me. I'm going to go back to what I said earlier. Let's go collect the taxes that we haven't been collecting, $137 million over 11 years, before we look at increasing any other taxes, especially on our retirees.
So, Leo, this question is for you. What, if anything, can be done to prevent free-range cattle and wild burros from causing traffic accidents?
Great question. Thank you. Thank you. I think we need to get the federal government out of our business. Right now, we have an issue where the burros, for example, are federally protected. So if one gets hit, it's in the middle of the road, nobody can touch it, which to me is crazy. So I think that, I'm somebody who believes that in local control, I believe that the federal government has its job of protecting our borders. But beyond that, let the states determine what to do. You can even, there's been talk of even selling the burros to people. So, but for me, the main thing is let the federal government get out of that business of taking control of the burros and let the states deal with it.
Okay, thank you. Next question for Jem, and this will also have a 30-second comment period. Do you support the Equal Rights Amendment, and please explain your position?
Okay, so the Equal Rights Amendment is the 19th Amendment. It's been in play for a long time, since the 70s. All but one state has ratified it, so that's what we're talking about. It's already been approved, we just need to ratify it. So Arizona is one of those states that has not yet ratified it, and I absolutely support ratification because The Constitution, in its original intent, did not apply to women. It applied to white, male property owners, and that was it. So we need to have constitutional protections for the women as an amendment, because all we have now as women is we have legal protections, and that may be enough for some women, but it is not enough for for the rest of us. We want the constitutional protection, because what's happening now is we've got a court system that is moving toward this original intent, and all these women's rights that we have fought so hard for and died for are at risk now. So we need.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you. Sunny?
Yes, the 19th Amendment was ratified in 1920. That was the right for women to get the right to vote. Thank God for the Republican Party. Thank you.
30 seconds. Anyone else? Okay. So this will be the final question. Sunny, this is just to you. One of the audience members is curious about your position on property taxes, and their specific question is, how is raising property taxes beneficial to the property and real estate owners?
I don't believe in raising property taxes unless there's a really valid reason for it. If it's for schools, once again, that goes to the local schools, city to vote on that. That's something that needs to be voted on individually by the citizens. If it's for a school, if it's for a certain issue, it should be sent to the people in that community. But arbitrarily just raising everybody's property taxes, I'm against.
Thank you. At this point in time, we'll move to our closing statements. Mary, we will start with you. Closing statements are 1 minute.
Okay, thank you everyone for coming, and again, thank you to the Citizens Clean Elections. LD5 is unique, diverse, and complex. Unique in terms of the geographic spread, that it's made up of 2 counties. Diverse in terms of its economic drivers in both La Paz and Mojave County. And the culture and complexity when listening to the constituents in our district is also complex. I want to be the voice. I want to apply my integrity, my honesty. I want to work every day to earn your trust and be your representative on the common ground issues, but also the very unique issues that don't affect everyone in every location. So I would appreciate your vote for me for House of Representative LD5. Thank you.
Thank you. Gina?
Thank you. Again, thanks all of you for coming out tonight. I know it's difficult to sit here and listen to politics when it's so beautiful outside. I just want to say that I've served you for the last 4 years, and I've got to tell you, I'm probably one of your hardest working legislators down there. I've been responsive to you. You send me emails, you send me Facebook posts, if you send me a message, I get back to you, and I usually try to get back to you within 24 hours. Oftentimes it's in the middle of the night, but I do end up getting back to you. We do have one of the most diverse districts in the state, and I've been able to, I think, balance that. In the last week, I've been in 6 different cities in the last 5 days. I feel I work for all the constituents, whether they're in Colorado City, La Paz County, or in Mojave County. We're only 3 of us, and so we have to create coalitions. And I hope you send me back to the state. Thank you.
Thank you. Leo, your 1 minute closing statement.
Thank you, everybody, for being here today. I really appreciate it. I think Gina and Sunny have been doing a great job so far as your senator and representative. And when I decided that I was interested in running, the first thing I did was go to the people, go to the local leaders, and ask them what they look for in a legislator. And what they all said was they wanted somebody to be open, transparent, and not only that, but just to listen. And being born and raised here in this district is exciting for me because I know that I have established those relationships with the people, with our government officials, and I have an open channel of communication with everybody because I know that in my title as a state representative, it's right there. You represent the people. That's your job, to listen to the people, to do what's best for District 5, And that's what's best for the great state of Maricopa. And that's what it's all about, is listening to you and doing what's best to better us here in rural Arizona in District 5. And I'd appreciate your vote on November 6th. Thank you.
Thank you. Jem?
I too thank everyone for coming. I know there are people here from Bullhead City, there are people here from Lake Havasu City, and I just really appreciate everyone coming out and listening to what all of us have to say. Informed voting is the key, and so I appreciate everyone. You know, we had an event in Bullhead City on Saturday, and afterward a woman came up and said she would pray for me because she thought I was just so angry. And I thought about that all the way home, and I said, you know what? I am angry. I'm angry that our water rights laws are allowing foreign investors to suck our aquifers dry. Our Board of County Supervisors throw their hands up in the air and say there's nothing we can do because it's state law. And our legislators, my opponent for the past 6 years has submitted 0 pieces of legislation to actually change those laws. I'm angry that our schools are not fully funded. I'm angry that our teachers don't have salaries that are professionally relevant. I'm angry that our schools, the children are riding on buses as long as 5 hours a day. I'm angry that we have veterans down in La Paz who are living in the cactus
you.
and the sand. Thank you.
Thank you. And Sunny, 1 minute.
I've been in the state legislature for 6 years. Your representation in the state for over the last 6 years in this district has made tremendous strides in Phoenix. We have a great relationship with the governor. We have a good working relationships with all of our elected officials, with the county and city officials, our chiefs of police, our county sheriffs. We're not going to be able to fix every little problem that comes up. Some are big, some are small. Sometimes we can hit, sometimes we can miss, but we keep trying. I'm not a career politician. I'm a Marine on a mission. I'm here to serve you. I've been serving you diligently. Even though they say we're a part-time legislature, if you're treating this like a part-time job, you're not doing your job. And I have not hit the ground running as a part-time legislator. I have been working for you solid, straight for the last 6 years. I have lots of endorsements from the FOP and all kinds of organizations in Phoenix, but the biggest endorsement that I can possibly have and be honored to have is your endorsement on November 6th. Thank you very much. Improve your net, hire a vet.
Thank you. So to our candidates, we thank you so much for participating in our forum. And to our audience members, we thank all of you who came out and took the time to inform yourselves before voting. We encourage you to visit www.azcleanelections.gov/voter dashboard for a customized experience and to find information on the general election, the candidates, the issues, and to view this debate on demand. Please fill out the evaluation form and return it to one of our volunteers. Your feedback is important to the commission and will be used to improve future debates. Thank you all for coming tonight, and you are welcome to stay and speak with our candidates directly. Thank you, safe travels, and good night.